Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Webtoon Wave. I'm Audrey, and I'm so excited to get into this episode today. I have a really awesome guest. She is the creator of SubZero on Webtoon. Please welcome Junepurrr. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get into this. I have so many questions for you, and I just can't wait to get into it.
I'm excited.
Yeah, so for our listeners or viewers, can you kind of give an introduction to you and kind of how you got into webcomic creation?
I always love these questions because I will start telling people my entire life story. But basically, I'm Junepurrr, and essentially, I've always loved drawing, and I've loved I've always had a dream to kind of draw for a living, and I really liked webcomics ever since I was really young. But like when I went to college, um, I think I initially wanted to try pursuing art in like art school, but I come from an immigrant family, so they of course said no. And so I decided to go into business school and as an accounting major. So I was doing accounting, and I was like in the middle of an internship, and that's when it kind of hit me that that was kind of going to be the rest of my life if I didn't, like, I guess, even try or attempt to do some sort of art thing that I wanted to do. And so I created this story while in the middle of like my accounting internship, while I was like very miserable. It was a very low point in my life, and I made it as an escape from that. And just I put everything in it that I was enjoying at the time, which was a lot of historical dramas. I love fantasy, so I included the dragons in there. And I kind of, yeah, I just, as soon as my internship was over, I poured like all my free time into it. And then like I ended up going back to work full time in accounting, of course, but within 5 months I just decided to finally quit and just pursue webcomics as a whole. So ever since then I've just been, making this webcomic a full time.
Yeah. So for anybody who's listening that hasn't read SubZero, can you give us a synopsis of the story?
Sure thing. So basically, SubZero is, I always tell people at like conventions and stuff who meet me the first time or who don't know what the story's about, it's an enemies to lovers fantasy romance with dragons. That's kind of how I would describe it.
Yeah.
So it's basically about this princess who is forced into an arranged marriage to save her people with this enemy prince who happens to have like, he's a dragon, like he can turn into a dragon. And then she has to marry him. And like she ends up having to go to the palace, and like it's a, oh no, he's hot type of situation. But and
Yep.
yeah, and so at the same time, I think she learns that, like, despite this 100-year-old, like 300-year-old war that's been happening between their countries, she realizes that he's not like 100% in control of the situations, and he has his own demons, and they kind of have
Mhm.
to like fight them together almost. Like once they have a lot of, I guess, common enemies, that people who want to like prolong this war,
Yep.
and they have to kind of work together and like put aside their differences in order to secure peace. And yeah, and at the same time they have to learn about their history of like the dragons and the original dragons who created the wars.
And did you start on Webtoon Canvas then and then
Yes.
um
So I think it was 2017 when I actually started posting. Like that was the
yeah.
year of my internship. So like that internship, I got the idea, and then I initially posted it to Canvas, and it was really funny because like exactly a year later, after it being on Canvas for a year, I got the email from an editor at Webtoon that was like,
Mhm.
"Hey, we'd like to, give you the like extend the offer." And I
Yeah.
think that's like really crazy that it was just like exactly a year apart.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And was that like when you were, doing it independently on Canvas, did you envision it turning into the full-time, like your full-time thing?
I think I secretly always wanted it to be. Like, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I think I have a habit of talking down to myself, like, oh, this is never gonna get featured or whatever.
Mhm.
But like secretly, think I've always saw it like ever since I learned that Webtoon was a thing and that there were creators who could make money off of like
Yeah.
webcomics. I saw it as an escape from my accounting job or like my
Yeah.
accounting future because I didn't go to art school. I never had connections into like anything art related,
Yeah.
like gaming, any of that. So I saw it as like this is my way to get into something, I guess, artistic that doesn't require me to have a degree or like connections because I didn't have any of those. So
Yeah.
secretly I've always wanted it. And yeah, when I got that email, I was actually driving and I almost crashed my car
Oh,
because
oh
I was so
no.
excited.
Oh no, oh my god.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you didn't crash your car.
Yeah, I mean, me too. But I was like, oh, I got the featured offer, yay! And yeah, like ever since then, it's just I decided to like put like because I ended up redrawing the comic, obviously, but I put
Yeah.
like all my eggs in one basket, basically.
Mm-hmm. So
Yes.
when you got that email,
Mm-hmm.
how long do you think it took you to kind of like redo the story? Like how much
Mm.
time did you have from starting
Um,
over to like
I
publishing it?
believe so. I think what happened was I got the email in June, and
Hmm.
then I launched in October. So I don't know
Oh,
how many
okay, yeah,
months. But
not a ton of time. That's
my editor had told me that like I didn't have to redraw anything if I didn't want to, or I didn't have to redraw
oh,
too
okay.
much. But I said, no, like the canvas version is garbage. Like I have to redraw it. You are wrong. So I redrew everything. I think I only saved like 2 panels of the original canvas
Hmm.
version, and I just redrew everything. So
Yeah.
yeah.
How did you get into art? Was that something that you had done for most of your life, or did you kind of just find drawing as an escape with
Um,
later in life?
I want to say it was a lot of like boredom. Like as a kid, I think people have a hard time believing this, but I was born in like a tiny Eastern European country, and like when
Hmm.
I was a little kid, my I would stay at my grandma's house, right? And my grandma's house was literally like a mud shack, like straight up, like the house was made out of
Oh,
mud, like
wow.
it's like middle of nowhere, like rural, like Eastern Europe, and like
Wow.
there was a lot of animals around, so I would just draw a lot of animals, and but yeah, I've always loved drawing. I think simply just because, um, like I was able to kind of make up stories in my head and put them
Yeah.
down on paper and kind of entertain myself. And then
Hmm.
later on when I think in middle school I discovered webcomics, like webcomics that would publish one page a week, and these
Hmm.
were made by authors that like I really respected, but most of them no longer are doing their comics anymore because at the time there was no Patreon, there was nothing to support them. So they were kind of just they all had day jobs and they were doing these comics for free online. And I love those comics. Like I still remember so many of them, and like I look back at them so fondly. But that was also kind of what led me to want to do digital art. And
Hmm.
so I think at like 16 my parents actually like gave me a tablet,
Oh,
and ever since,
wow.
yeah, it's probably like my favorite, like my best like gift ever. um
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I still have it like years later, and it's got like wires poking out of it, but it still works. Like
It does. Oh, wow.
yeah. It's a very old like Wacom tablet, but
Yeah.
it's yeah, I don't even think they have drivers for it anymore. But yeah, I look
Oh,
back at it
wow.
very fondly, and it was the same tablet. Like, so I that tablet that I had for 10 years, that's the tablet that I started SubZero on.
Hmm.
Um, and eventually I ended up replacing it. But yeah, like my entire like comic and everything started off on like the crappiest computer and like the crappiest tablet and like paint tool size. So I always tell people that their tools don't matter at all. Like you can have like garbage for tools, and I guess as long as you put something out there, it's still like worthwhile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Um, how did you find your art style? Because yours is like very recognizable and like distinctive.
I think this is an interesting question because I think every artist or everybody that I know is like they can't pinpoint what even makes their
Yeah.
art style. Um, but I overall see it as a combination of things that you've stolen from other people,
Yeah.
things that you like stolen from other people. So
Yep.
I think there's a lot of like online artists that I really like, and then as well as like the older webcomic artists that I liked. But I think there's a mangaka called what's her Kara Kara Kemuri, and she's like I love her art style. It's kind of like
Hmm.
I remember I like recopied a couple of her manga pages, and that's just kind of how it starts. Like every
Hmm.
artist will you'll see something you like, you'll recreate it in your own way, and then you'll end up kind of stealing something from that. Like
Yeah.
he likes to draw white pupils, and so I was like, this is cool. I'm gonna do white pupils from now on.
Yeah.
And that's just yeah, that's kind of how I see it. And it's always changing and evolving based on like what you're exposed to and what you
Hmm.
enjoy.
Who do you have any other like favorite artists or digital artists?
Uh, I have so many that I just like. I feel like I don't want to name any of them because I have so many actually.
Yeah.
But there's also like of course other webcomic creators too. But yeah, I really love Miso's style. I will say her style is like very cute. I
Hmm.
love like Snail Lords has like such a good grasp of like anatomy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
so
he
yeah,
does.
yeah. So there's a lot. Like I feel like if I named them all, we'd be sitting
We'd
an
be sitting here
hour.
all day. Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. Um, so how did you, so because you're self-taught, how did you teach yourself anatomy? Because
Mhm.
and like special effects too, like your webcomic has a lot of like fantasy elements and special
Mhm.
effects. How did you go about kind of teaching yourself those things?
Um, I think that's just one of those. So when it comes to webcomics, I actually only knew how to draw animals and like
Yeah.
horses especially. So if you look at my story, a lot of the things that I'm more confident in is actually like the animals.
Hmm.
And so I only started learning how to draw people like a few years before SubZero. And I wasn't like I never wanted to draw people, but I think
Yeah.
eventually when I started like looking into webcomics and wanting to make the idea come true, I started, drawing people. And I don't know, some people remember the canvas version very fondly, but when I look at the canvas version, I'm like, "Oh my god, their anatomy was all over the place." Like you just I think it's just a mixture of like studying other artists, studying like actual anatomy, and then like being able to be critical of yourself and like just look at your work and compare it to other things, and eventually you'll figure it out. But
Hmm.
obviously I think like what everybody should do is just spend 15 minutes or 10 minutes every day sketching anatomy. I don't do that because I'm like lazy, but
And you're also
but
really busy.
yeah, but like if you do that, I think eventually you just learn it. Like you just it'll just come to you, I guess, and you just remember
Hmm.
the shapes. And also because I think because I'm making webcomics and I draw so much and the
Yeah.
same characters over and over and over,
Hmm.
eventually you kind of just remember what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's one thing that I appreciate about webtoons and webcomics is like because you draw so much, um, you eventually are just gonna get good. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're just going to figure it out eventually. And it might not come easy, but when you have that deadline pressing on you, you're gonna whip out some anatomy really fast.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also just like repetition too. Like the more
Yeah.
you draw something, the more you just
Hmm.
naturally, like you said, like remember the shapes and yeah.
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 Mhm.
Especially when you're drawing like every single day and drawing
Yeah.
so much every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, you published SubZero on originals in 2018, 2019,
2018, like
2018.
very late, like October 2018.
So, as you've been publishing it for this long, are there like things that you've done to kind of help you save time to hit deadlines consistently? Do you like
Um,
would you have any time saving tips for maybe other webcomic creators listening?
I have a couple. I think number one is don't care as much. No, no, I'm just kidding. Um, I think for one, you have to prioritize the beginning, the ending panels, the beginning panels, and I think the whatever's in the middle, that's like the meat of the chapter. You
Hmm.
kind of have to identify what is the meat of the chapter, and like for example, if there's like a steamy kiss scene, you
Hmm.
just you're like, okay, you're gonna put all your effort into this steamy kiss panel or like the few panels leading up to it. But for like in between panels and stuff like that, you have to kind of know when to pull back. So that's helped me a lot. And then also having like a very intensive and rigid style, I would not advise. Mostly because, you know, we're webtoon creators. You have to draw your characters in various camera angles, and
Mm-hmm.
especially if you have like a very rigid, anatomically correct style, I'd say, and if you want everything to look perfect at all times, you're going to spend so much more time doing like crazier camera angles. So I
Yeah.
think people who have like floatier art styles tend to have an easier time. And then yeah, like if you can get an assistant who you depend on and pay them really well, if you can
Mm-hmm.
manage that, I think it's
Yeah.
like a huge time saving tip or time saver. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like us indie creators, of course, we don't need to worry about being really like putting out episodes every week and like putting out a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work every week. But yeah, I mean, like you know, especially when you've drawn the same characters for so long that it
Mm-hmm.
just kind of gets naturally like you get quicker with drawing
Yeah.
them.
You kind of learn who they are because in the beginning, I remember like I had a ton of trouble with Cairo's hair, for example.
Hmm.
Like his hair is very spiky,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Where's this supposed to go? Like, how are
Yeah.
the hair?" But I think drawing it over and over and over, you literally like memorize their faces or in their
Hmm.
hairstyles, and yeah, like now I feel like I could draw them with my eyes closed. Like my hand
Oh
will
wow.
can draw them.
That's amazing. So I remember first reading it and I was amazed by the art and there wasn't I don't think at the time I don't think there really was any other like dragon based webcomics on originals. Maybe it was maybe like a couple, but
Mhm.
I mean I love Avatar the Last Airbender and I love I don't know I mean I assume that you've seen Avatar the Last
Yeah,
Airbender. So there's that episode where Aang and Zuko have to go learn the the what is it like the
the
purest
firebending.
yeah firebending and then there's the dragons yeah
Yeah,
yeah so I
that
remember
was
first reading SubZero and I was like oh my gosh it's like the dragons from Avatar the Last Airbender this is amazing.
Yeah, I think so. My dragon designs were a little bit more, well, originally they were inspired by like Spirited Away. Well, you can kind of
Yeah.
see it, like
Hmm.
Haku from Spirited Away because I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I love how like wavy his body is." And
Hmm.
I think most of the time when people draw like dragons or like dragon webcomics, they also kind of assume in like the Western dragon with like wings and stuff. But I
Hmm.
specifically really well at this time I was watching a lot of like Asian dramas and like historical dramas, and I was like, I love the whole like palace politics type of story, and I just
Hmm.
thought like the dragons fit right in there, you know, because them being like descendants of dragons. So I kind of married like concepts that I was enjoying at the time, and you know, this was literally my escape when I was super sad. So
Hmm.
yeah, I just created the story out of that.
Yeah something to like really like a fantasy story that
Yeah.
brought you out of yeah I think a lot of creators can relate to that aspect of their stories are kind of like an escape from their jobs or like other struggles they have going on in their
Mhm.
lives and
Mhm.
um so that's definitely a relatable thing you're definitely not alone in in
Yeah.
that aspect so you have printed volumes of SubZero.
Yes.
Okay.
So so basically what happened is like you know, like a while back, or these books have been 3 years in the making, honestly. Like I never realized how difficult it is. Well, I never made the story to be adapted into books, so
Hmm.
I never thought that it was going to be printed. So because of that, like you know, when it came time to talk about like making it into a book, I realized like what a, I guess, challenge that was. So like pro tip for anybody starting a webcomic, if you ever have like dreams of having a printed version, like I guess try to think of putting it in like a 6 by 9 format, because it's
Hmm.
also easier if you're like trying to pitch to publishers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But essentially what I did is this book is actually not it's not like printed with Webtoon Unscrolled, which I think is a little bit confusing to some
Hmm.
people. Some creators just like go, I hired an agent, and then she took the book to different publishers, and then that's kind of how the whole process was. Like, Oni Press is the publisher, and so I worked with them in order to reformat the book, and I redrew a bunch of panels. Like, from, again, this is like third time around. I redrew a bunch of panels in order to get it to like my finished version of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like extra goodies in the back that we put in there, and like, surprisingly, earlier in the interview, I told you how like exactly 1 year on like exactly 1 year after I posted my webcomic, I actually got the featured offer.
Yeah.
Well, it was something like exactly like 7 years on the same date that I actually got the Oni Press offer, or something like that.
Wow.
And I'm like,
That's
wow, this is,
amazing.
I don't know. I just think it's very like fortunate, I guess.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm really proud of it. And like, you can find the book in basically Barnes and Nobles. The first day
Mm-hmm.
it was out, I like ran to Barnes and Nobles to go. To my surprise, every Barnes and Noble I've been to has like one copy.
Mm.
But they were, it's really cool. Like, you can go and like I sign it and I leave it in the
Yeah,
book.
that's amazing.
And yeah, it's basically been like a dream come true. I feel like, in a way, like, seeing it as a physical copy means that like it's kind of there to last. It's not
Yeah.
as, I guess, transient as like an app on a webcomic. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you delete the webcomic app, you just like forget SubZero exists. But I think having it like in store just means kind of like, oh, I made it. Like, I actually made it.
Yeah.
So it's been really like rewarding, and I really hope like readers and like fans like can spot it, and like they love it, love it as much
Yeah.
as I do. But yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible to have it like in a tangible form. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
scrolling on your phone and reading it is one thing, but physically, like in a book form, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me, what inspired you to create Clove? Because she's a protagonist of
Mhm.
SubZero. Tell me kind of the inspiration that went behind her.
Originally, I think, well, I really wanted a character that started off. I think I love watching characters struggle. So I
Hmm.
wanted a character that started off at a massive disadvantage. And I think some people, this might be like frustrating for like some readers, I guess, but I really like the fact that when she goes to meet Cairo, she has these problems where she isn't able to like match him in terms of like power and
Hmm.
like strength. And I thought that's like speaks a lot about her character, that she's still willing to go through this despite the fact that she knows she has this like massive weakness.
Yeah.
And I think throughout the story, like, because she doesn't have like these magical powers like every other character, she's forced to kind of think outside the box and like persevere even when like everybody else doesn't want her to, or is like trying to stop her, and she can do it like without these powers. So I think deep down it's kind of a story about like strength of will, if that makes any sense,
Hmm.
where
Yeah.
with no matter the circumstances and the pressures and the expectations that people have of you, you can find a way, and it doesn't have to be like the direct way that everybody expects. It's it's like you can overcome anything even without like all these things that people expect of you to have, I guess.
Hmm.
So it's a strength of will story. So that's
Yeah.
kind of that's what Clove is about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I like how they contrast each other, like her and Kyra. I like how they just totally are just opposites, and
Mhm.
they don't get along at all at first, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love those kinds of couple dynamics.
Hmm.
Starting out, like they don't get along, but eventually like warm up to each other, and then they're
Hmm.
like, oh, there's aspects about you that I do like, and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I also think it's really awesome to have a character that is really relatable, like even if it is a fantasy setting and they're in,
Hmm.
this fictional world, but having those like realistic traits and things that
Hmm.
people can like. Clove as a character speaks to a lot of people who struggle with the
Hmm.
same stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that about SubZero, is those
Mhm.
relatable traits that she has.
No, thank you. And she's like, she's able to like charm him without like
Yeah.
dragons. So I think
Yep.
that's kind of what like what she's there to be, you know, like a strength of will kind of symbol.
Mm-hmm.
But yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good. It like pays off because eventually
Mm-hmm.
overcomes her, struggles and
Mm-hmm.
flaws and weaknesses. Okay. So you said that in the beginning you were just learning to draw animals and then you kind of started to learn how to draw people. But what does your art process look like when you're drawing your comic?
So I think it looks crazy. It looks like a crazy person. No, I think as webcomic creators, we have to learn to juggle a lot of things
Hmm.
at all times. So essentially, like, I update on a Sunday. So after Sunday, I'm usually like dead for the next 24 hours. So Monday is
Yeah.
really like my off day slash taking care of anything else that I need to around a comic. Like going to get groceries, which I included
Hmm.
in my week, even though it's like because I do think about the story. So I need time to think about the previous like the next chapter. And then on Tuesdays I will sketch out this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday I'll be sketching out strips and I'll be inking them and then I'll
Hmm.
be sending them to my assistants. So I'll do like the line art and I try to basically do my line art and depending on the subject of the line art I try to send it to the assistant that has the biggest strengths. Like,
Hmm.
I have an assistant that will color the dragons really, really well. And I have another assistant who can do special effects really, really well. So I'll separate them like that.
Hmm.
Uh, then like I'll be inking as they're sending me stuff back. So I'm
Yeah.
juggling like all the stuff I receive versus the stuff I send out. And then like I have another assistant who helps me with filling out my text bubbles.
Hmm.
Basically, like I'll do writing, but then they will have to break them up and put them into bubbles across the
Yeah.
panel.
Hmm.
And then, so finally, when I have all of these things together on Saturday through Sunday, I will basically stay up like a full 48 hours, or maybe I'll sleep like 2 hours in between,
Oh my
and I will
God.
put it all together.
Oh.
Yes, and so I do kind of lose sleep around the end of the week, but I feel like it after I update, I will usually sleep for like an entire like 16 hours. So I make up my sleep debt. And so
Oh
that's kind
man.
of what the art process looks like.
Yeah.
Um but that might just be me because I have like a very intensive like paranoid like perfectionist art style. I think
Hmm.
it's really good to just be like this looks good, I'm going to let it go and then like continue. I feel like if I'm given 48 hours to or like if I'm given like a month to make something look as good as possible, I will take up to the last moment of that month to like keep making it prettier.
Yep.
But that's my advice.
Yeah. So how long was it until you did have assistants, or did you just have them from the beginning?
I would admit like I used my sister. My sister was kind of an assistant for me on Canvas,
Hmm.
but she would help me on and off. So I would still consider like a lot of it like I was doing my own work, but I officially got assistants that I was paying and like communicating back and forth with all the time around episode 50. So the episode where Clove and Cairo have their wedding and it's like
Hmm.
full of like decorations
Yeah.
and whatever, that's the episode that I got the assistants because I needed them.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I need, there's so many details. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like ever since like episode 50 onwards I've been using assistants and it's made my life so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. It's the passion, I guess. It's like passion and like will and then also I think there is a part of like not wanting to disappoint your readers and fans.
Hmm.
That's helped a lot too.
Yeah.
And like looking forward to seeing like comments every week has been like was really motivating, especially in the very beginning. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Were you ever worried about like the audience's reception to SubZero?
Um Yes, but I think that's just one of those things you have to, I guess, I don't want to say put aside a little bit, but like you have to write the story that you enjoy as a creator. Of course, you have to be mindful of the audience and Webtoon standards, but
Hmm.
in general, like I noticed that if you're making things for other people and you yourself do not care for the content itself, the content's probably not going to be good, because it's like, I don't think you know those people. Like, you don't know what everybody wants, and you can't really make everybody happy. And it's like, at most, I think the most important thing is make sure that you're enjoying the story that you're making so that you can continue working on it. And
Mm-hmm.
the people whose like niche your comic fills, that's who's going to be like your ride or die fans. And
Yeah.
people who don't, it's not their cup of tea. It's never going to be their cup of tea. It doesn't matter like what you add to it, I guess. So,
Yeah.
so yeah.
So how was the experience moving from Canvas to originals? Would you say your audience was like similar, or because the more creators that I talk to, the more that I get the sense that originals audience, like originals, like people who read originals are
Mm-hmm.
different than people who read Canvas stories. So, do you think that the reception was kind of different from?
Maybe it's like a long time ago, so I don't remember, but I feel
Mhm.
like in general, I think Canvas is seems to be a bit more forgiving, because I think majority of people know that their audience or the readers are not um they're not getting like paid a lot of the times. They're doing this
Mhm.
for fun, or they're just kind of working, being supported through Patreon.
Yeah.
Whereas like on on original, there is an expectation, and it's not an unfair expectation, because you signed a contract to,
Mhm.
you know, produce the story, and you're getting paid for it and like whatnot. So I think people are, and you also have a larger audience, so you're going to probably be hit with, more nasty comments or more criticized
Mhm.
critical comments.
Yeah.
um, but I think you also have to, like, you have access to a much wider audience and wider net of people who might enjoy your comics. So
Mhm.
I don't think the transition made me like upset in any way.
Yeah.
I was actually, I think I was just happy to be featured, honestly. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, what would you say? Since you've been doing this for the last 6 years
Mhm.
professionally, what has been your favorite aspect of being a full-time creator?
I feel like there's so many moments in my day-to-day life where I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I have my job.
Yeah.
Um, Mostly, so I think it's really flexibility. When I was like working in accounting, you have the 9 to 5 job. I was driving to and from clients. I didn't have a say in like where I'm supposed to go, even if
Mhm.
I have to, like, I used to have to drive like 60 miles to one client, in a single day. And
Yeah.
like now it's like I have the flexibility. um so it's great to not have to answer to anyone's schedule. I'm like a night owl, so I love working at night, or
Mhm.
nocturnal creature.
Yeah.
um like I like if I could, I would just work at night and like sleep during the day
Yeah.
almost. But it does, I will say, it does kind of come with the own like problems as well, like when you're running your own business and running your own like enterprise almost. It's like every time you fail, it's really your failure. Like, you can't blame
Yeah.
it on anybody else. You have to also like deal with things like, the little things like in getting yourself insurance, or like, there's no company party, there's no like favors that anybody gives you. It can be a little bit lonely. But
Mhm.
so what I really do is just like I get on call with like other creators and I just work on my comic.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the best part. And like, I love being able to meet the fans and see the readers, and like, I can't believe that there's actually people who like read my comic, and like I get to meet them in person, and they
Yeah.
talk to me about my characters, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I can't believe these people know them. These are like the people in my head, but
Yeah.
they know so much about them. And so that's been like really, really rewarding. And but yeah, so yes, the flexibility and definitely like the fans, hands down.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Like having people to talk to about like these things that like, because I think every creator puts a part of themselves in their story, and
Mhm.
it's like your lens, and you end up finding like the things you enjoy other people enjoy, and it's reflected in this story. And
Yeah.
so you kind of have this like common passion that you find. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, and when you first started publishing, like, because I mean, I only started publishing a webcomic like Like my first one was like 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really lonely in the beginning. Like I didn't have the community that I have now. What
Mm-hmm.
was it similar to you when you first started as well?
Yes, I think because I used to be in like an art community and I had friends there, but then when I
Mhm.
decided to do webcomics, I was like, oh, this is kind of it's kind of lonely. Like I don't know anybody here, and it's
Yeah.
like I think the only thing you can really do is, at least nowadays with the with social media and with the internet, just if you like somebody or like you admire somebody's work, like just reach out, just talk to them. And that's kind
Yeah.
of what happened to me. Like I would reach out to a lot of the creators that I reached out to. They ended up like, they're like, oh, I love your story. And this was in Canvas,
Yeah.
so like we started talking, and then like they would bring me into like creator groups of like other creators that were also Canvas creators. And I
Yeah.
can see like nowadays there are like there are collaborations that happen on Canvas, and I think it's really wholesome and cute. Like
Yeah.
I feel like if you have a chance to interact with other people, like not only do they probably have resources that maybe you don't have access to, but like everybody's in the same struggle together,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, and I think they understand like having to make webcomics on a week by week basis, or like just publishing webcomics and having to learn so much like about storytelling and drawing and 3D backgrounds and special effects. It's like there's so much overwhelming knowledge that you need to become aware of, that's like it helps to be with other people who are like doing the same, going through the same struggle as you are.
Yeah. Yeah, because it can feel motivating and reassuring. Like
Mhm.
if you're in a time where you're like really struggling with the story or just maybe anything outside of the webcomic, like it's really nice to have the people
Mhm.
around you to kind of like rally and like support you and be like, yeah, that
Yeah.
really sucks. We're here for you. I know I'm small, but I'll sometimes still get people drawing fan art of my
Mhm.
characters, and it like literally makes my month when that happens. I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody like sat down and took the time to
Yeah.
draw my characters. Like that is amazing.
Yeah, I think that's like so, I don't know, whenever I see fan art, I like my day is like made. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, somebody I'm another day to draw this." And like
Yeah.
there's so many talented people out there. It's like
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it's like also really surreal to just see your stuff in like other people's style, and
Yeah,
it's just,
definitely.
yeah, I love it. Like, ooh, I love it
It's
so much.
it's like the biggest compliment. Like people love
Yeah.
your story and your character so much that they want to draw
Mhm.
it. And like I also just get amazed like there's just so many talented people out there that I just like it's because sometimes they'll like draw a fan art and I didn't even know that they existed. I'm like I didn't even know.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm sorry
yeah.
I didn't notice you, but like now I see you like you
Mhm.
know it's just special. It's like I think that's an extra fun way to like show that you support a creator is
Mhm.
doing fan
Yeah.
art of, of their characters. But
Yeah.
um yeah. So I mean, would you say that's like the most rewarding aspect of
Yeah,
being a
I think
webcomic
it's
creator?
yeah, I think it's very rewarding, just like being able to see like, yeah, exactly, just being able to interact with fans and seeing like, I don't know, I think the moment I decided to quit my job was basically we were at like a signing. I was still like technically working, and like I
Mm-hmm.
had a fan come up to me and she had like tears in her eyes, and she was like, "Oh my God,
Oh,
your story has helped me through like
oh,
dark times, I guess." And then I realized like I felt like the impact that I was making with my webcomic, like if it makes your day just a little bit better, that is so much more worthwhile than
mm-hmm.
making spreadsheets every day.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, I realized like who cares about the spreadsheets, like I don't care, like no one cares, like ultimately, but like I care about this person in front of me who said like my story like made her, life better, or like it made her feel like she had an escape. And I remember how like low to the ground I was when I was making it, and it just,
Yeah.
yeah, so I feel like that moment is like, even that moment alone is like, for me it's like worth all the pain and how much like how difficult it is to make the comic. It's like
Yeah.
worth it to me.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like to be able to like something that you're already passionate about that has helped you, just realizing that it also has like helped other people has got to feel really rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
for sure.
amazing. And I
Yeah.
think every creator would like like shoots for that, you know, like
Mhm.
because again, it's like us putting our work out there is also us trying to connect with people and like
Mhm.
have those connections come back, right?
Yeah.
And it can be daunting though, like putting something you're
Mhm.
so passionate about into the world. Like, yeah, it, you know, we want it to come back with positivity, but sometimes it can come back with negativity and
Yeah.
hateful comments and criticism
Mhm.
where it's not warranted. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
I
it's, yeah.
I think most of the time the likelihood of there not I'm not trying to say there's not negative comments, but negative comments most of the time, like when you put something out there and it's really like it's like a reflection of you as a creator. It's like you say, you do put like yourself, like you're reaching out, but
Hmm.
I feel like someone's going to connect with it. I just feel like the likelihood of there being it's more likely for it to come back positive than negative in my opinion. And I just feel
Yeah.
like that's why I don't feel like anyone should be afraid of putting their work out there. Like, I'm a lot of people are like perfectionists. Like even me, it took me like 3 months to put out the prologue because I was like I
Hmm.
kept trying to make it better and better and better.
Yeah.
And it's like no, you shouldn't be afraid of like what's the worst that can happen at the end of the day? Like, oh, if someone leaves you a mean comment, but you know what, someone else like across the world could find something in your story that they connect to, and they're like it not only helps them, but they're going to be like your lifelong fan supporter. Like
Yeah.
I still meet people who remember the canvas version, and this is like
Wow.
7 8 years later, and it's
Yeah.
it's so crazy to me because it's like they've there's a book now, and like they remember, like they know what the canvas version was like
Yeah.
when I was like in my internship. And it's just, yeah, like I always want to tell people like don't be afraid. The most important thing is for you to just create it, because
Yeah.
like you just have to, if you have a story to tell, put it out there, because like I don't know. I just feel like there's almost like no real risk. Like the risk is almost imagined that like, oh, I'm going to, I guess, sink all this time and I'm going to get like met with backlash. But the likelihood is like you're going to sink, I guess, time, and then you're going to have learned a lot from
Hmm.
like the whole process altogether. And like maybe it doesn't work out the first time, but it didn't work out for me the first like 10 times I tried to make a comic. Like eventually, if you keep trying, you're going to learn enough that it's
Yeah.
going to like stick. So yeah.
Yeah. I, yeah. I mean, it can definitely be difficult, especially if it's something that you've never done before,
Mhm.
trying to make it work. But you know, what would you tell creators or maybe people who want to be a webcomic creator? What would
Mhm.
you tell them if they're like really worried about like
Mhm.
not knowing how to do it right now or worried about negative
Yeah.
reception of it?
Um, I think so. Number one, like just I think everybody just needs to know that making web comics is like not meant to be easy. It's just not. Like the amount of knowledge you have to have about, like, I always compare making web comics to kind of being a director on a movie set,
Hmm.
but you're doing also everybody else's job. So like you're the
Yep.
director, you're the screenwriter, you're like the special effects people, you're the actors too. You're
Yep.
the and like okay, you have to draw them, so you're like character design, you're like the entire wardrobe department, your makeup, hair and makeup, like everything you can imagine, you have to do that. And then on top of that, you have to like finance this comic yourself. So like you have to like do the accounting for your comic. It's so much
Yep.
stuff. So
Hmm.
it's not meant to be easy. And it's like I think most creators are always like in a level of discomfort while they're creating their webcomics. Like you just have to be okay with being uncomfortable. And I think anything that's like worthwhile means like you're going to be a little bit uncomfortable. Obviously like not suffering, but like you're like my day-to-day state when I'm creating the webcomic is always a little bit stressful, and it's not a
Hmm.
comfortable feeling, but
Yeah.
the end result is like really good, or I'm proud of the end result. And I
Yeah.
think also like all these things like writing 3D, like everything you need to learn about webcomics, you don't have to. So when making webcomics, there's just so many different things you need to know. You have to kind of be a jack of all trades, where you have to do like writing, uh, drawing, character design, everything you can possibly imagine, but you don't actually have to be good or talented at everything. There's things that I'm just not good at, but because you can be good at other things, it's like it all comes together. And I think people won't judge you as harshly as you think, especially because most people don't know how to do all these things either. And so, like, that's one of the things I want people to know. So you don't have to be perfect at what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I want like people to know is like, as long as when starting out, I think I really want people to have like a beginning, like an idea of the beginning, and that you have to have an idea of the ending.
Yeah.
If you don't have an idea of the ending of your story, like don't bother starting, because if you don't have a takeaway or a moral, then there's just like, what are you gonna do in the middle of your story where you get like, are you just gonna stop and like figure out the ending? And that's the biggest problem that I had with all the previous comics that I wanted to make. It's just I didn't have I had a cool idea and I didn't have an ending or a takeaway. So you need to have something like love conquers all, like a moral that people can take away. And like those two things have helped me like a lot, just knowing like I don't have to be the best at everything, and I know where I'm headed. And everything else is just like, just do it.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part. Also, I think another thing I want people to know is that you're never going to be ready to make a webcomic. You're never going to have the skills to both do 3D, writing, drawing, makeup, hair makeup, like everything that you need to do for your webcomic. You're just never going to have the skills. And the only way you learn these skills is actually doing the webcomic. So just jump into it, like have an idea of your beginning and your end, and you will learn so much along the way that you might just end up being like me, like if you get a featured offer, you're like, I'm just gonna scrap everything and redraw it from the very beginning.
Yeah. And no, that's really good advice. I mean, that's like one of the most common things that the creators that I talk to say when I ask them this question is like, what would you tell people who want to be webcomic creators and are maybe not sure where to start? Is every single one of them is like, you just got to do it. Just start. Have the story. And there's a lot of aspects that go into even just storytelling part that takes a lot of time and is hard to figure out. But you'll never be fully ready to be a webcomic creator. You just gotta you just have to jump into it and you just have to do it and enjoy the process. Like us indie creators, we're not pressured with deadlines. We're not beholden to anyone. And, that's the nice thing about it, is that we can create whatever we want. We can create it whenever or whatever we want, whenever we want. And I think just enjoy the process, because like, how lucky are we in this day and age to be able to create stories in this fashion, right? And and anyone can just do it and put it out to the world. And who knows, maybe it will lead you down a road where you become a professional, or, it goes really well. Like, you just never know what could happen.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's just, you're never gonna be, no matter what you do, if you get promoted at work, I'm sure a lot of people feel like, I'm not ready for this responsibility. And a webcomic is a huge responsibility. So you're just, if you're writing a book, if you're writing anything, I know people who plan for years, like years and years, writing the story, like the lore of their world and stuff like that, but they never actually start telling their story. And that's the thing. It's like, I feel like also it gets so boring when you know everything. Like, I guess it's when you plan so far ahead that it's just like, no, you should just do it. And eventually you're going to be able to, I guess, work backwards and like flesh out these other details as you're working on the story. But
I think, to anybody who's listening that or watching who wants to be a webcomic creator, or they're thinking about it, there's, you can watch our previous episodes. A lot of the creators I talked to about how they got into webcomics, kind of how they started, best practices for what your process should look like. There's also a book called, and this isn't sponsored, but there's a book called Webtoon School by Hong Nanji, and he basically breaks down storytelling for webcomics, and it's a really great read. And I recommend everybody goes and gets it if you're considering being a webcomic creator. But yeah, I mean, nowadays there's a lot more resources out there to kind of learn. Like a lot of people talk about their process, and there's YouTube videos, and it's a different environment than what it was like 5, 6 years ago.
Oh my god, I agree. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and I had a lot of fan questions, but a lot of them asked plot related questions. So I sorry to people who ask plot related questions, but I I couldn't include them. I'm sorry, I couldn't spoil the plot. But okay, let's get into it. Okay, so Linz McLean asked, how far in advance is the story plotted?
So the story is basically like I have an outline where like I have the ending, like I know what's going to happen at the end, and I know like throughout the story, I know like the high points of the story um as I'm making it. And then basically everything between those high points, I kind of, it's not that I make them up, but a little bit like I will kind of work week by week and I try to reach these like these like middle goals, and then I have like my ending in sight when I try to imagine that like everything that I'm doing is contributing to this like ending goal. But most of the time it's like I'm trying to reach the next high point of the story. So yeah. But in terms of like, I'm not sure if the question is asking like how many chapters are out.
Yeah, I'm not sure. They just asked how far in advance is the story plotted. So I
Okay,
guess
well, it's completely plotted, but in terms of like episodes, like if there's like episodes out in Fast, maybe I'll have like one or two buffer episodes that are out. But most of the time, I work week to week. Like I am
yeah.
racing against the clock. So yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the same situation a lot of other originals creators are in with the week to week. Yeah. Starlit Rim asked, what do you consider when designing clothes?
Oh my god. I think for webcomics, it's one of those things where unfortunately, you just do not have the time of day to make really beautiful ornate clothing.
Hmm.
And if you do, whenever you see those, they're usually brushes or like Clip Studio assets or like
Yeah.
Acon 3D assets that have been like it's like lacy things that like somebody else has created and they're kind of using it.
Hmm.
So me personally, I don't primarily work in Clip Studio. I'm like a weirdo artist where I prefer to work in Paint Tool SAI and then I switch to Clip. So I don't have a lot of these assets.
Hmm.
But when I design clothes, I used to really hate it. Like I used to hate like having to dress them up in like fancy clothing. Even though I decided to write a story about like dragon royalty for some reason,
Hmm.
I used to really dislike drawing clothes, and then now I think the more I did it, the more I've drawn. It's just like now I like love it. I love drawing clothes. I even made like a dress up game actually. But it's I think I look at a lot of like dramas, but a lot
Yeah.
of the times I can't replicate like the how ornate these dramas are, because they have like full on costumes and these are just actors being filmed. Whereas like I have to, if there's a flower on Clove's like clothing, I have to draw that flower in like 100 times.
Hmm.
So a lot of the times what I do is like I try to simplify the clothing, where I also turn towards like MMORPG type of like gaming, like fantasy clothing, because it is also like a fantasy setting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the things I consider. And also I try to keep in mind like the background. I always want the characters to stand out. So if it's like a starry night, I'm not gonna try to put Clove in like dark blue, purple
Hmm.
clothing. The
Yeah.
characters, I always try to make them stand out so that there's more clarity when you read the comic and you can kind of
Hmm.
always know who's who.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you said you made a dress up game?
Yes, it's actually called like if you just go like junepurrr.com, it's like my dress up game. But it's not like amazing. Like I got my boyfriend to code it really quickly. And I don't
That
know
is
if you can see it.
amazing.
Yeah, but it's just like you dress Clove up and it helps me with like nowadays it helps me with designing like her outfits for next chapters.
Yeah.
Like another chapter, I'll be like, oh, what does she wear? What's she gonna wear this week? So I just go through and like click through all the options and yeah.
That is amazing.
I think
I'll
most
have to go
people
check it
don't
out.
know about it. Yeah, I
I
think
had no
most readers,
idea.
yeah, like most readers don't know about it. I think maybe I'll post that to my creator profile. But
You should. You should.
I originally made it for my patrons, but like I think I announced it before, but like with webcomics, you don't see everything the creator makes, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's incredible. I'll definitely have to check it out.
Yeah.
um, so Melon's Art Shop asked, how do you make backgrounds for your webtoon and what program do you use to draw?
Okay, so first of all, what I draw mostly in like I do my line art and Paint Tool Sai, and I sketch in Paint Tool Sai.
Mm-hmm.
But I when it comes to my assistants, I do not care what software they use as long as it looks like mine. So I'm very
Mm-hmm.
lax on my assistants. I'm like, if it looks beautiful, you can do whatever you want. So some of my
Mm-hmm.
assistants use like Medibong or like Clip
Mm.
Studio Paint. Most of them use Clip Studio Paint, but I work in Sai.
Yeah.
And then for backgrounds, I have like a love-hate relationship with this question because for the longest time, I didn't actually know about Acon 3D. And so for
Oh,
anybody who
yeah.
doesn't know, yeah, Acon 3D is the it's a Korean website, or it's a
Mm-hmm.
website wherever people can buy webcomic assets, and it can be anything from brushes, backgrounds, like so I did end up buying like a palace, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
like other things, but I hate the way 3D backgrounds look. Like I despise the way they look. So most of the time I will take screenshots and then I will try to like paint over them
Mm-hmm.
or try to make them a little bit more like to match the style of the comic. Because I just think they look so ugly. Like like
Yeah.
even $100 model sometimes just doesn't look good. And
Well, because
so
it's so jarring in
yeah,
comparison to your like art style. Like having
yeah.
something 3D just looks off.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen also the comics where like I'm not hating on anybody, but like there's a character riding like a 3D horse, and the horse is clearly very 3D, and I'm like, oh my god, that looks.
Oh, I've seen that.
There's
There's
a couple or
threads
like
on Reddit
yeah,
people dedicate to the
yeah,
3D horses.
yeah. I just can't like look at that. So I try
Yeah.
to. It's not just backgrounds, but I will also use like free backgrounds, like what's like Google SketchUp
Hmm.
has oh no, sorry, like SketchUp. They have like a 3D warehouse where you
Yeah.
can find like free assets basically. And
Hmm.
so a lot of times what I'll do is like I will take those screenshots even from Acon or whatever. I put them through Photoshop. So like Photoshop and Clip Studio has like filters. So
Hmm.
you can put multiple layers of filters on them until they look like I guess palatable to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then finally I'm like, okay, I guess this will do. But there are times where like because of Webtoon deadline, I'm not happy with the backgrounds, but you know, people don't seem to complain too much. I do also think like for backgrounds, yeah, like honestly, if I could, I would draw them all myself, but there's just not real time. There's just not the time for it. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend of somebody just investing into if they're making a webcomic for the first time, invest in a more expensive asset that has multiple things that they could use in that asset. Like if there's multiple rooms that you could use instead of like buying single individual rooms because it's just not yeah, it's a lot easier when you have like one big asset with just a bunch of rooms that you can use. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And it can be hard, like for indie comic creators who don't have the money
Mhm.
to invest into getting backgrounds. And I mean, I have
Yeah.
a creator friend, she does all her backgrounds herself, and she'll like
Yeah.
send screenshots into our group chat and of like
Yeah.
her drawing hallways and buildings. I'm like, how do you do that?
Mhm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
She's like, well,
Me personally, you know, I was just gonna draw it originally, but yeah,
yeah,
if you can just I guess learn how to make backgrounds too. But I don't again, you have to be an architect to be a
yep,
webcomic creator
yep.
too. And like an interior designer as well. Like it's all these things that just add up to like the I guess the barrier to entry almost. And you know,
Hmm.
Google SketchUp these days is like $350 if you want to buy
Yep,
actual software.
yeah.
So if you're making a webcomic for the first time, I would not do what I did where like you need a palace because like or not
I
like
keep it
yeah.
simple.
Yeah, keep it a little bit simpler, I'd say.
Yeah,
Because definitely prices have gone up with like everything. Like every software that I see that used to be free is now like really expensive for some reason or it's gone up in price. So I feel really worried for like upcoming creators, because these things are like, not only is there a higher bar, but it's like things are more expensive, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. So it can definitely be hard to navigate. Um, and if you, yeah, there's just a lot of hoops to jump through starting a
Hmm.
webcomic. That's why I always tell people, like, if you've never done it before, keep it as simple
Hmm.
as you can, because otherwise you're just gonna be, you know,
Yes.
putting too much work on your shoulders, and you're committing, like, it's your first attempt at doing a webcomic, so keep it simple.
Hmm.
Um, keep it
Yeah.
short. Yeah.
Like you're more likely to fail if you're more likely to not proceed with it if there's like more and more things that you have to learn that you have no idea. And then
Hmm.
not only do you not have any idea how to do them, you don't even know if the webcomic is going to like succeed, more or
Yeah.
less. So
Hmm.
are you really going to spend $350 on like Google SketchUp? I mean, there is a free version. I'm just saying, like, if you again, like if you want to open like a big palace, it becomes so much more difficult if you don't
Yeah.
have like the top of the line, like everything.
Yeah.
But I think, you can start out small and like expand, but you can't start out grand and get
Hmm.
smaller, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's really good advice.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, definitely. Make it easier on yourself and keep it simple, and, you know,
Yeah.
and if at some point if somebody gets along, when I first started my webcomic, I used pre-made backgrounds in Clip Studio, and I traced over some like pictures of
Hmm.
backgrounds, and just I kept it simple, and now I've gotten to a point where I can actually like invest into that,
Hmm.
like 3D background assets and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it took me a few years to get to that point to be able
Yeah.
to do that. So,
No, same. Like I used to just draw all my backgrounds by hand, and I was like, how do these people do it? Like, how does these people? Because everybody was using SketchUp, and I was like, I don't know
mhm.
how people are so good at drawing backgrounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, not every asset is like super expensive. Like I think
Mhm.
if there's something that could save you a bunch of time and it's $10, $15, I used to be very like, I guess, proud. So I was like, no, I don't need this $15 asset, but it would save me so much time. So,
Yeah.
have a limit that you set for yourself, and just kind of like learn how to remove walls, add walls, that type of
Mhm.
stuff. And again, you don't have to be an architect. You don't have to be an expert in Google SketchUp. You just have to know the bare minimum and think of creative ways to like get through your problem. Like, for example, I'm kind of like rambling here, but in the beginning in episode 8, Cairo is in like he's supposed to be in like a bath or like a sauna,
Mhm.
right? And like I didn't have a palace sauna like on hand. So
Yeah.
the asset that's being used is actually just a swimming pool. It's literally
Yeah.
like I went in a swimming pool and I put like rose petals in it. And I'm
Mhm.
like, it works. Like if it works, it works. So you just
I
have to find,
never even knew.
yeah, you just find creative ways around, I guess, your problems.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's part of the fun too. Like as a webcomic creator, you're just like, yeah, I need a bath, but I'm going to type in a swimming pool. Um,
Yep.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's good advice. Our next question. So this person had two questions.
Mhm.
So Ladios Art asked, "What are some things you know now that would have helped you when starting?"
So something that I wish I would have, like known like earlier on is that it's just, number one, I think I put a lot of my time and energy into those very beginning chapters, and a little bit to my detriment. Like I stayed up so many late nights. I gave like everything, and fortunately it like worked out, but I do wish I would have taken a little bit better care of myself. And like I never realized the kind of damage that can happen with so much prolonged stress. Like it can have a very like bad impact on your health. And like thankfully for me, I think I'm very healthy, but I wish I would have taken a little bit better care of myself.
Hmm.
And then at the same time, it has to do with kind of what we said earlier, where you're never fully prepared. I think like you're never prepared to start a webcomic. I think I always delayed starting this webcomic because I thought I was waiting for my art to like improve or get better.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that truly scared me into finally like making the webcomic was just the idea that I would have to work in public accounting. And I think that's just something a lot of people struggle with. They're like waiting for something to like, I guess, kick them, or to, this is like my time, this is my moment. But that's the thing, like time is such a limited resource and you only have so much of it. And as you go through life, I'm pretty sure your life just gets more and more chaotic and difficult with like work and like family and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to do it at, I guess, whenever you possibly can. Like, and that just sometimes means like, sacrificing. Yeah, again, you have to be in like a state of discomfort in order to be creating anything worthwhile. So that might mean, I'm not going to play games today, or I'm just not going to watch Netflix. I'm going to just be working on my webcomic. And I find that the people who can be in that like state of discomfort are the ones who like tend to persevere the most, I guess. But yeah, I wish I wouldn't have delayed it that much. Like, I guess again, the discomfort back then was like too much for me until I realized how uncomfortable like working in public accounting was.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I'm like,
Yeah.
this is worth it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really good advice. I think a lot of people could benefit knowing that like you don't have to be perfect to start. You just have to start.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so Ladios Art's other question was how long was your pre-production? So when you restarted drawing, how long did it
Mhm.
take you until you launched SubZero?
I think I started like, again, I got the offer in June and then I launched in October, June, July, August.
It's like
It's
four
like,
months.
yeah, a couple more months, right? And so like from then on, I was like redrawing everything every day. And then I do think like I still remember this, but like my editor, when I was working with him, like the first candle that appears in the webcomic, like you first see a candle in the prologue, I
Mhm.
redrew that candle like 30 times. Like I repainted it. I went back and forth,
Oh
like making
no.
because I think he wanted it a certain way, and like I wanted it to be perfect too. And I think that was like my test, that I was like, I'm willing to like basically put everything I have in this. I think I should have used the 3D asset again, but I
Yeah.
didn't think about it. So I repainted that candle and I redid everything. And um, I think the pre-production period is like very important because you get into the mindset of producing on a weekly basis,
Hmm.
and you get like everything together. You get your assistants, I mean, I didn't have that at the time, but
Yeah.
once you have to kind of get into this like, yeah, like your adrenaline filled like
Hmm.
weekly uploading period, because once publishing begins, it's like there's no real going back and there's nothing that you can change or edit. But the
Yeah.
pre-production period is good because I changed a lot of things in the story, or like things in the story that I didn't feel were like going to help the story in long term. So it's like, again, it's like a chance for you to start over because the initial version wasn't perfect. So it was like my second round at redrawing everything. And you know what? Now with the book, there's like a third round. So I
Yep.
redrew the same panels again. So obviously don't get like obsessed with that. But yeah, it took
Hmm.
about 4 months, and like I'm happy I did it. I'm actually so much happier with like the finished version than the canvas version. I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was like the best, literally the best that I could do at that time. So
Yeah.
I look back at it like fondly, but also
Hmm.
like, man, I worked so hard on that candle.
That freaking candle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's actually a shorter uh
Hmm.
time frame than I thought initially.
Yeah.
I think some creators they spend I mean, it also depends on Webtoon giving you the green light of when they are actually
Hmm.
going to like publish it. Um
Yeah.
I guess it does depend contractually too on
Yeah.
like
I
Webtoon's
think
end.
yeah, it also probably depends on the creator's like actual, because I at the time I was in like my summer break, or like
Hmm.
I can devote this, or I actually know I had just graduated from college and I was waiting to start my like job that I was
Yeah.
contracted. So I was like, I had this 6 month period that like I was technically supposed to be studying for the CPA exam, like
Mm.
the accounting, like basically the
Yep.
certification exam, and I was like just working on my webcomic the whole
Yeah.
time. So it's like, and some creators are like in school, so they're like studying, they're I've heard of creators being in medical school and like doing web comics, and I'm like,
Wow.
yeah, so
How?
yeah. I'm surprised it was 4 months too, because in my mind it feels like it was like a year
Mm.
of like just nonstop. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was only 4 months.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's really fast actually. And how many episodes did you get done in that 4-month period?
I don't really remember. I think back in the day, the requirement, I think they realized that like people will burn out kind of quickly if they don't have a strong buffer. So
Mhm.
I think nowadays the requirement's like 15 episodes. Like
Yeah,
you
that's
have
what
to
I've
have
heard too.
15. But back then, I think I had like you launch with like 5 episodes, I think.
Mhm.
Or no, you launched with 3. So I probably was only a couple of episodes ahead, like 2 or 3 episodes ahead.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just started with like 3 episode buffer, and like slowly I was just like losing buffer every single
Mhm.
month until until I started work, and then I was also working full time and losing buffer at the same time.
I don't know how you were doing that. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Absolutely crazy.
yeah. I mean, it's the passion. I really think it was like the passion and the adrenaline, and like I was definitely a lot younger. So like like my obsession and my passion like really fueled me at the same time.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
like, it ended up working out because, within 5 months, I was like, I don't think I need to continue this accounting job if this Webtoon job is like paying me the same amount of money. Like,
Mhm.
why am I going to struggle? And like shortly afterwards, Webtoon did introduce like their the Fast Pass,
Yeah.
which I think was like, I never thought anybody was going to pay ahead for webcomics, but I
Mhm.
was like blown away by how many like, or like how successful FastPass ended up
Yeah.
being. And I
Yeah.
think it's helped like a lot of creators like turn their lives around, and like, or
Mhm.
just really be able to like pay assistance and commit their time full time to creating webcomics. It's not like those artists that I followed when I was like really young, where they were working a full-time job to support themselves and then putting out webcomics for free. Like, it's really sad what happened to so many of them because they weren't able to support themselves. And like
Yeah.
now we have like Patreon and all these things. So I really feel like it's almost like the best time to, if you want to be a creative and you want to put out web comics and connect, your stories with people, like this is the time to be alive. Like we have TikTok. Maybe it's
Yep.
getting banned, but
Maybe. I guess we'll find
maybe not.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy that you were able to do that much in 4 months. Yeah, super impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, okay, so our last fan question. So Alice Disaster Piece asked, how does she know what limits to set for comprehensible yet intriguing world building? And that's kind of like a long
Yeah, I'm
question.
trying to think, I'm trying to like understand. So I really try to break it down like chapter by chapter. For one, I have like a rule where like the world building and all this stuff, like you have to learn something new per chapter. Like at least you have to learn something new. So that means like whether it's you learn something about a character or you learn something happened in the story. But like I try not to do too much of it because like, I think most of it is like people like want to understand the plot, but actually I think people love seeing the characters interact, so you try to balance both of it. And I think if you're going to focus on like a lot of the plot, you have to focus on the plot but also try to mix in character interactions because the
Hmm.
story is being told through the characters actions. um and yeah, like it is definitely like a difficult question. I don't know if I'm like answering it correctly,
No,
but
I think you're on it. Yeah.
yeah, just I think you have to have like, again, there's a lot of variables in SubZero. There's like dragons, there's this war and this history, there's the characters like problems. So you have to kind of take it a little bit at a time. And I guess it's in a way you like switch off between the problems. Like if one episode Clove and Cairo got a moment, in the next episode, like we probably need to like move along the plot.
Hmm.
And after we've moved the plot, we have to have like another character interaction like
Yeah.
that. So you kind of like carousel between these things, and I think that's what keeps it spicy or like
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's definitely difficult to have that balance of good storytelling and keeping up with
Mhm.
your schedule, but and webcomics is like a different form of storytelling, and I think if creators aren't sure how to go about doing that, there's a lot of storytelling like resources online and like YouTube
Mhm.
videos, because like
Yeah,
you can apply the same concepts that go into writing a book into creating a webcomic, because the storytelling aspect is the same.
yeah.
You're just
I
applying
say
a
that.
visual aspect to
Yeah,
it.
I think it's more for me. I try to. I think because I've kind of tried the book writing angle, but my problem with like or even the screenwriting angle, but like
Hmm.
my problem with it is that I'm limited. Like I will always write too much, and I
Yeah.
realize that there's things that when you're making webcomics, there's like characters have a pause in their speech. Well, on paper it's like a dot dot dot, but
Hmm.
when you're drawing it, you have to draw that. So
Yeah.
you actually end up having to draw like way more than you realize in order to make the story like flow and be cohesive.
Hmm.
And so that's why I equated more to being like a director. So like I actually watch a lot of like director like camera filming type of videos because camera angles can tell you a lot about a scene, like whether it's like you're using Dutch angles or like
Hmm.
fisheye angles and whatnot, or like worm eye angles, like you're like a worm on the ground, like
Yep.
you can use them to your advantage. And being a director kind of helps you because I sketch and I script my comic at the same time,
Hmm.
just so that I can avoid that mishap of like, oh, there's a pause in here, or there's like I have like 10 extra panels to draw that aren't even in my script
Yeah.
technically.
Yep.
um and there's like a lot of, I think webcomics needs to follow, like you have to have clarity in your webcomic, you have to understand what's happening. And if at any point you kind of lose, like the reader is not able to understand the flow of what's happening, um like you kind of lose the reader, so you
Hmm.
have to put in enough panels so they understand, and then you also have to keep it interesting. So it's just kind of balancing, but I like to think of it as like you're right, like a lot of the storytelling aspects do apply to it as well, but you also have to think in like pictures, as
Yeah.
that's how I would recommend going about it, um like a movie.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it for sure. Like think
Mhm.
about
Yeah.
it in like a movie sense or a director kind
Mhm.
of. Yeah, definitely. And like storyboarding can help things go a long way when you do
Yeah.
that initial planning, because you'll know like you can literally, a lot of people get confused when I talk about storyboarding.
Mhm.
Um so like I'll just explain this for our listeners that don't know what
Mhm.
storyboarding is, but basically what you do storyboarding, you can have just like literally you can print out a bunch of like frames on a sheet of paper, and then you can have lines below them, either write out what the character is saying and then some like stage directions of like what action they're doing or what's happening, and then you can
Mhm.
just sketch like what's happening in that panel.
Like
And
chicken scratch.
like chicken scratch, you can literally just chicken scratch it. It'll really help you kind of narrow in and stay on track with your workload, and it will help you like visually like reduce your workload too, because you'll know
Mhm.
like, oh, I don't need to draw a panel for this line, or maybe I
Mhm.
can combine lines for a single panel, something like that. So it's definitely helpful.
I even think that's kind of the hardest part to me. I like in general, in terms of the process, it's usually the so it's like, okay, I have information that I need to convey, like the shiny new thing, readers are going to understand this chapter. And what's like the problem is, how do you convey this information in an interesting way?
Yeah.
So you end up like doing all these storyboard sketches, and like a lot of the times it's like, oh, there's a better way. You realize as you're doing it, like, oh, scrap this. Like I end up scrapping like 2 strips, and then like the actual art and drawing part of it is to me the fun part, because it's like
Hmm.
I just turn my brain off and I make things pretty.
Yeah.
But like the actual, to me that's the most difficult part, that's like I guess hard to get out of the way, and that's almost the part that I dread. Unless I like visualize it really well in my head, that's the part that I dread the most, because I know it's going to take me like I'm gonna scrap and like trash a bunch of like storyboard pages until I finally get to the right one.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It definitely is one of the hardest parts, but it can help you in the long run.
Yeah, for
Be
sure.
more effective with your time and what you can accomplish. Okay, Junipurrr, that is all the fan questions I have for you today. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and telling us how you got started, talking about SubZero. It was really interesting to talk to you and get a look into your process and to, just learn more about you. So thank you for giving
Well,
me that
thank you.
opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. And like
Yeah.
again, I really appreciate that like, you have like podcasters who interview webcomic creators who like
Yeah.
I guess are able to show people that, we are real people who draw behind a screen and we
Yep.
read all your comments and,
Yep.
uh, even the mean ones. No. But yeah, thank you so much.
Hey, Junipurrr, thank you so much for joining me today. It was such an honor to have you on the podcast. I will include all of your links in our show notes. You can follow Junepurrr, follow her at JUNEPURRR. So that's June and then Purr with 3 R's. Sometimes people are like, Junipurrr? No.
It's all right.
Junepurrr.
I accept any name.
Yeah, so you can go follow her on Instagram at Junepurrr. She has her link tree. All of her links are in there. Go follow her on social media. Go read SubZero on Webtoon. You can also go check out and buy her books of SubZero and have your own physical copy, which is really awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much once again. This was awesome. Thank you.
So if you found this episode informative or entertaining, leave us a comment, give us a like, follow us on our socials at the Webtoon Wave. You can follow us on Instagram. You can listen to us on Spotify, watch us on YouTube, and leave us a message if you want. If there are future guests you'd love to see on the podcast, our DMs are open. Feel free to send in requests. And any webcomic creators or other creatives who are interested in being on the podcast, you can go to our Instagram bio and our link tree. We have a Google form that you could fill out if you are interested. So stay creative, stay inspired, and we'll see you next time.